Yes, let's see. Ah, yes, we are being recorded and it will be edited down. Any errors or things going overtime will be edited out. But yeah, we're being recorded right now. So go ahead and click the Got It button and we'll be on our way. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the OTA and hold on, where's it? Yeah. Oh, I've got to do that one. Okay. All right. This is a production of the OT Association, and our email address is indiebridge.org. That's our website. We also have Indie Bridge on Facebook, and you can email us at info@indiebridge.org or ask an OTA member how to join our Facebook group. It's really calm, really, we keep the drama out of there. We keep the fighting and politics out, and we just enjoy talking about tech and sharing wins. So we hope you can join us on Facebook if you have Facebook. And just so you know, before we get started, our next OTA event, part 3, how to increase your income and prosperity. And this will be further applications of admin tech and conditions beyond what we're covering today. And it'll be a little more interactive. You'll have a chance to ask questions, and Steve Poor and Randy will be the ones leading that as well. That's Saturday, June 1st, 2024, 10 a.m. Pacific time. All right. And let's see here. These are the members of the OT Association. We started a group, a steering committee to help promote LRH Tech in the independent field and to public, and to make LRH Tech better known in a friendly, real ARC-ful environment. So Trey Lotz, OT8, Class 9, and ELS Auditor, is a member. Randy Smith, one of our speakers today, OT7, Class 9, Auditor and CS. Also a member, Z Snyder, OT8, Class 5, Grad and Auditor. Jerry Tunadal, OT8, Class 9 and Auditor, and now CS. He's just completed a CS course and is interning under Randy Smith, which is wonderful. Is a wonderful young man. Is the future of auditing, indie auditing. Ingrid Hoffman, OT8, a Dianetics Auditor. Greg Cohen, OT8, Class 2. And me, I'm the chair of the OTA and your MC. My name is Mary Blackford. I am OT6 and a Class 2 auditor. All right, and I'm retraining. I'm starting from level 0 because it's been a while. Anyway, here we go. Let's take a look at what we've got for you today. Our guest panelist, Steve Poor, is the owner of Turner Management, which uses LRH tech in the field to improve the prosperity and income of small businesses. He's been doing this since 1985, 40 years of consultation experience. He has helped thousands of businesses with LRH tech, and he has referred hundreds to the LRH Bridge. So he is doing Solonauts. He's trained executive status 1. For those of you who were on staff, that'll probably mean something. He has done dozens of admin courses. KTL LOC grad, is a data series evaluator graduate. He's trained in the data series, which you'll hear more about today. He's ESTO trained, Philadelphia doctorate course, PDC trained, and a NED or Dianetics Auditor. So we're really glad to have Steve with us today to continue the discussion of talking about admin tech. And I'm going to do real fast, quick review of part 1. For those of you who were not here last time, what we did is we defined what a condition is. Now, a lot of you will go, because, conditions were assigned maybe arbitrarily or willy-nilly in another organization, or maybe you had a wrong condition applied and everything went very sideways. But we want to put conditions forward as something very positive, something that can improve your condition or your state in life in whatever area of life you choose. And I've highlighted the main things in red. I'm not going to read everything, but here we go. A condition is the state of something, its appearance, quality, or working order, a particular state of existence. Condition or conditions are the circumstances affecting the way in which people do their work. A condition is factors or prevailing situation influencing the performance of a process, or a state of affairs that must exist or be brought about before something else is possible or permitted. And it's remarkable, LRH sort of has all these combined in the Tech Dictionary definition of condition. Hubbard says that these conditions are operating states, and oddly enough, in the physical universe, there is a formula connected with every one of these operating states. These formulas apparently have to be followed in this universe, or you simply go appetite over tin cup, which is slang for head over heels or confusion. All right, and that's in Scientology Ethics, Introduction to Scientology Ethics. The conditions, we're going to use quotes from that quite a bit today. And you'll find a copy of that, a PDF copy in the chat. If you would like a copy, just copy that link and download it. Yep, it's in chat right now. Conditions continued in his own personal life, in his operation of a job, a state of organization, a state of family, a state of civilization, the state of a planet, the state of a sector. All these will come under the heading of the conditions, and if they are in one condition and operating on the formula of another condition, my word in there, they will fail. So you have to apply the correct condition. And what we're going to talk about today is how we determine the correct condition. All right. And that again is from Scientology Ethics. A condition can be assigned to each dynamic. We have 8 dynamics, and I think there are a couple more, but we're going to stick with the 8 for the time being. A condition can be assigned to each dynamic as appropriate. Today, Steve and Randy are going to focus on success as an executive, success on the 3rd dynamic. I'm going to give you a quick definition. We've got a lot of definitions today, folks, but hang in there, it's worth it. The 3rd dynamic is the urge toward existence in groups of individuals. Any group or part of an entire class could be considered to be a part of the 3rd dynamic. The school, the society, the town, the nation are each part of the 3rd dynamic, and each one is a 3rd dynamic. This can be called the group dynamic. And that definition is from the Admin Dictionary. We don't have a copy of that for you today, but it is available online. Just ask any of the OTA members or email us at info@indiebridge.org, and we can find you an online copy, a PDF copy. Okay, so success as an executive. I'm almost done, Randy and Steve, hang in there. What is success? The accomplishment of an aim or a purpose, the attainment of fame, wealth, or social status. And that's from the New Oxford American Dictionary. And I'm going to turn it over to Randy and Steve now as they talk about executives and what they do. So, Randy?
Hello.
There you are. And Steve, are you there too? Okay, I'm going to mute myself now because I've talked enough. You guys take it away if you would.
Go ahead, Steve, if you'd like to take it away.
Okay. So I'll be sharing some successes and some experience that I've had in business. I've been in business since I was in my mid-20s. About the time I got into Scientology, I discovered, actually, after I did get into Scientology in 1977, I discovered that the way that I was going to pay for my bridge and have the time to pay for my bridge was to somehow figure out how to be in business for myself. which required me to get the data, the tech on how to be a business owner. And I discovered very early on in Scientology that LRH had written all this material on administration, management, the OEC's Organizational Executive Course, which is covering all the org board, if you're familiar with the org board. And there were three other volumes called the Management Series, a whole dictionary defining all of the basic terms. And so it was all there for me to start in business. And I didn't have to go to business school and make 1,000 mistakes. And so right away, I became successful. I mean, it was like very easy using the admin tech. And I've been in business ever since 1977. So today I have two businesses. I've built and sold several businesses. Several of these businesses are still in business, and some of them have been shut down since, and so forth. Not every business succeeds, but today I do business consulting still. I started that in 1985. I started business consulting, and I started another company about 3 years ago, and it's doing very, very well. And let's go into this this material here. What's an executive? One who obtains execution of duties, programs, and actions in an organization to further the aims and purposes of that organization. HCO PL, Hubbard Communication Office is HCO, policy letter PL. And so one who holds a position of administration or managerial responsibilities in an organization. And I always just make this really simple. When I consult my clients, I just tell them that an executive is one who gets others to get the work done. And you'll find that somewhere in LRH materials, that those words. And I also tell them that an executive, a manager, is not somebody who goes around and wears everybody's hats for them. An executive, a manager, is not someone who goes around and solves everybody's problems for them, holds their hands, wears their hats. Basically, when that is done, that person is not an executive. That person is a worker, and that person will never get others to wear their hats if they solve their problems for them. And they'll always be overworked. They'll never get into a phase 2, which is where others are working under you as juniors and you are managing. You'll never become a manager that way. So I'll just add that as a comment. So there's other definitions here: an executive or foreman, one who can obtain, train, and use people, equipment, spaces to economically achieve valuable final products. Well, an executive, a good executive, not only can wear the hats under him that he expects others to be able to perform the duties of, but a good executive can also train others and correct others. If he can't train people, he's not going to get very far. and it's very important to be able to train and correct. There's a lot of material, a lot of technology on correction. There's a lot of technology that we're not going to be covering all today on how an executive administers an organization, how an executive gets others to get the work done. But so the next slide here, let's see, conditions are declared on the basis of statistics. Well, I think we have some good definitions of statistics here. And a statistic, next slide, is you're measuring the relative rise or fall of a quantity compared to an earlier moment in time. So if you look at a statistic, if you look at a graph, you'll see that there's more than one point on the graph and more than one line. If you had just one statistic, one number, for example, on a graph or on a piece of paper, that's not really a statistic because you're not comparing it to anything else. So you've got to be able to see what was being produced in quantity prior to what you're looking at in present time, if that makes sense. I think some of these definitions will clarify this more. So a relative rise or fall of quantity compared to an earlier moment in time. If a section moved 10 tons last week and 12 tons this week, the statistic is rising. If a section moved 10 tons last week and only 8 tons this week, the statistic is falling. That's pretty simple, right? A number or amount compared to an earlier number or amount of the same thing. You're measuring the same thing. Otherwise, you're not getting a proper reading if you're not measuring the same thing, the same product or the same service that you're measuring as a product. So statistic refers to the quantity of work done or the value of it in money. And so I think that's fairly simple.
Yeah, that
we'll
sounds good.
We'll open this up to some questions. Yeah, we'll open this up to questions at the end. So if anybody has any confusions, please just note them down for yourself. And at the end, we'll clear up the confusions, hopefully. A tight reality, a stable point, which is to measure any department from the ideal scene. All right, so next slide. If you can't get a statistic, so you can't get a statistic on a product that you're producing, a service that you're producing, it all becomes rumor and you will soon be in trouble. And I just want to clarify here for those who missed the last seminar that we did. I want to clear up the fact that with a statistic, you're measuring a product, and a product is a finished, completed, finished article. It's a finished thing that has exchange value. So it's something that you can touch, feel, measure. You can see it. And sometimes people get confused when you start talking about service as a product. But if you can define well the service you're providing, you can name the product. So let's take something really simple. Let's say you're going to start a car detailing, car washing, to keep it super simple. Let's say you're going to start washing cars, cleaning cars for a living as a business. Well, what is the product? I mean, the customer brought you the car, so that's not the product, right? But you clean the car, and the end result of cleaning that car is a cleaned car, right? It's a clean and the car looks good, it's clean. And so you could measure that by saying, okay, for every car that's brought to me that I clean and finish, and it's very clean, it looks good, and I can show that to the customer when they come and pick it up. You could say, okay, my product is a cleaned car. So pretty simple, right? You can always measure a service as well as a product. Okay, hope that helps. The basic of statistics, product, a completed thing that is exchange value within or outside the activity. So this is important too, because within the activity, as a product on the first line there, the second line, the body, actually the first line of the body of this is within or outside the activity. So within the activity, if I'm the receptionist in a organization and I take a phone call and I pass that phone call to someone within the organization successfully, that is a product within the activity. And outside the activity, if I go out and deliver a widget that my company manufactures, and I deliver that widget to a local business where I operate, where my business is, then that's outside the activity. So you're exchanging with the customer outside the activity, and you're exchanging with a fellow worker within the activity. I think that's probably pretty simple. So let's see here. If there's anything else that we should cover on this page. A product is a finished high quality service or article in the hands of the being or group it serves. I think one thing to add here that I want to say, if you see there, it's a finished high quality service or article in the hands of the consumer as an exchangeable for a valuable. So what's exchanged? Normally money. So I give you a widget, which is just a fictitious sort of whatever. I give you a widget and you give me $1. So if you don't give me $1 for my widget that I'm giving you because you think that widgets are valuable somehow, and you don't give me anything for it, it's not exchanged. There's no exchange, so there's no product. So you always have to have a product. If you go, I consult over the years. I've consulted a lot of dentists, for example, and I was in an office one time, and the customer, the patient, was walking to the front. I was following I was in the practice observing, and making some notes, and I followed the customer, the patient, to the front, and the patient seemed quite happy at the end of the procedure that the doctor and the assistant and so forth, the hygienist, provided that patient. And I'm walking to the front, following this patient. The patient gets to the front, and the receptionist says to the patient, would you like to pay for this today, or do you want me to bill you? And the patient had their hand on their wallet at the time, and the patient says, yeah, go ahead and bill me, and walked out the front door. Now that patient probably paid. That patient probably exchanged. However, there's no guarantee. It's certainly, the patient certainly didn't exchange at the time. So the patient really didn't get a product. In that sense, there was no product produced because there was no exchange for it. So if you can't get an exchange, if you can't get paid, you're not getting products, right? Pretty simple, right?
Yes.
So you have to complete the whole cycle, the whole production cycle, and that includes getting paid. Always good to ask for the money. Always good to ask to get paid. Never a problem. Never ever, if you're going to be in business and you're going to start a business, or you're in business, never ever be shy about asking for the close, asking for the money, and not just a verbal, yes, I'll pay you, but make sure you get paid. Otherwise, you're not going to be in business long and you're not getting products. That's the problem, is there's no product. Okay. So
Good, good.
valuable final product, VFP, something that could be exchanged. Go ahead, Randy. What do you
Oh,
want to say?
yeah, good point. And I just want to mention, I went to a dentist recently that did this the right way, I believe. When I came out of the dentist chair and I went to reception to get scheduled for my next appointment, and the receptionist, who was also the cashier, said, "Okay, do you want to use the same credit card you used last time?" And so that prompted me to pull out my wallet and hand over my credit card. And then she gave the amount, and I quite happily paid it right there. That's an example of what you're talking about, right? Make it
Right.
easy for them to pay, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to get paid.
Yeah.
Just make it super simple. And uh, being nice is good too. Um,
And of course, before that,
and
the main service
yeah,
being
uh,
applied was very competent dentistry, and I was very happy with what I was getting and everything. And of course, that's the most important thing, you know. But by all means, get paid for it.
yes,
Carry on.
by all means by all means get paid for. Money's not a bad thing. Sometimes SPs and psychs and so forth like to shout down money or people that like money or like to get paid, or they call them money motivated. Well, that's fine. It's not necessarily the highest motivation uh, on the scale of motivation, but it is a motivation, and nothing wrong with getting paid. Okay,
That's right.
so it's better. It's better to have in mind. It's better to have in mind. I mean, we're going to talk about exchange, and maybe we'll even talk about the 4 levels of exchange, and certainly when I'm selling my services and products, uh, I've always it's always been easy for me to always keep in mind the customer's needs and wants, and um, the value of what I'm delivering in a service or product for the customer, and focus on that more than focusing just on the money. But at one point at the end of the cycle of action, yes, we have to discuss the money, and it's fine to ask for it. Okay, so VFP, valuable final product, something that can do. So there's very good definitions there. You can all print that off, read it. I think you'll have a copy of it. It's very good stuff.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah.
the next page, production and one's own standard of living. This is one of my favorites. Um,
Yeah, I think
Standard of
Randy
living
wanted
can be
to
defined.
do this one, but okay, we're good.
Go
Oh,
ahead, Steve.
did
Okay.
did you want to say something more, Randy?
Well, I'm just gonna, as we talk about this, I want to get to the 5x stat part of it. But let's go ahead and define standard of living
Oh,
first. Okay.
5x stat.
Yeah. In other words, somewhere in this
Oh,
policy letter, he says, as an individual in an organization, you had better produce approximately 5x what you need yourself to make a living for yourself on. See that sentence right down there, right under the second highlighted part
yes,
there. Yeah.
yes. Uh,
But
yeah, you
but
should be able to produce 5x what the organization has to pay you. Um, so yeah, I
but
always tell my clients that. Uh, go ahead,
well
go ahead, Red.
I sort of skipped over defining standard of living. Let's go to the previous slide again. So standard of living is defined as the relative quality of a person's or group's possessions, quarters, food, equipment, tools, and conditions of their area of work and existence. It's the state of the person's living, including working environment. Where its potential continuance exists, it's related to survival. It's a basic natural economic law that personal production of valuable final products and one's standard of living are intimately related. Anyway, that's good on the definition of what he means by standard of living, right? And another
Yeah,
point he's making here,
In
just to
other words,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead, man.
To paraphrase this, he's saying, well, you need to produce an excess of what you just need in terms of your own money. Your organization also has other requirements like overload, taxes, services, plant, utilities, raw materials, and other costs. So a person cannot expect to get the full value of his products all to himself. The excess varies from post to post and
That's
job
right.
to job, but it's never less than 5x minimum. Okay. And in industry, it's considered to be at least
That's
10x to maintain company standards and solvency. So do you think of
yeah.
an
Good.
example? Think of an example of this. Example of what would be an example of this, Steve, as far as why an individual needs to produce? Well, let me think of one offhand. So let's say you have an organization, you're just starting a new company, and you have one other employee. Now that other employee expects these days to make around $20 an hour minimum, right? So
Okay.
so does that mean that if they produce $20 worth of income per hour, is that going to be enough for the organization to survive? In other words, they sell $20 worth of product every hour and you pay them $20 an hour. Is your organization going to be very viable? No, of course not.
You'll be broke. Yeah, right. You'll be broke in no time, right? Because
Right.
yeah, he's getting 100%.
He's getting
Yeah,
100% of the
getting
income.
100%.
Yeah. So in
Right.
this,
Yeah.
so the organization has other requirements. For example, your income, and you have to buy materials. You have to have you may have to pay rent on the space you're using. You have to pay taxes. You may have to buy other services. You may have to purchase advertising. All of these kind of things have to be accounted for. So this is where it says the 5x. Gross income divided by staff has to be at least 5x the cost of the standard of living of the individual staff member. I'm just reading that one line down there. So not to get into too much detail here, but
Yes.
it has to be a multiple like that for an individual to produce in order to live comfortably, and for the organization and the people in the organization to live with an adequate standard of living. That's the main point, right?
I have a question, Randy.
Yes.
Sure, Mary,
Absolutely.
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. Let's say you are an artist and you're making sculptures from driftwood.
Okay.
You have the tools, there's no expense there. You pick up the driftwood, there's no expense there
Well,
except for
except,
time and then assembling the sculptures.
yeah,
Uh,
how about driving to the beach, you know?
right. Well, yeah, here's kind of the question I'm coming down
Okay.
to.
Okay.
How does one calculate the value of one's hourly work? because there might not necessarily be a total product at the end of 1 or 3 or 5 hours of work, but how would you calculate this into the 5X theory here?
Well, I think first you identify what are the main products that your organization is producing, especially in the exchange, like Steve was talking about. What are you going to exchange these for anything with other people, with the society around you? So that would be the first thing to look at. Are you going to sell these sculptures,
Mhm.
or is it simply done for your own satisfaction, you know?
Yeah, I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of a viable business. Like, you know,
Business, right?
you're up
Yeah.
on the Oregon coast and people drive
Yeah.
by all the time, and you pop these out in the front yard and put a for sale sign on them, you know.
Yeah.
It happens all the time up there. But
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Here-
Well,
here-
yeah.
I would
Yeah,
say, just to give a quick
I'll
answer,
make a, I'll make a, I'll make a comment.
go
I'll
ahead.
make a comment too on this, okay? Um, what, there's something called, and LRH talks about this also, what the market will bear. In other words, if I was an artist, I would put a high price on the product, painting, sculpture, whatever it is, right? Put a high price on it because it's completely arbitrary, right? What is it worth? It's worth what someone will pay for it, right? People, I run a couple of motorcycle clubs, vintage and motocross, and I have one buy sell page, right? And people are always asking, what is this worth, right? Well, the answer is always what the market will bear. What will people pay for it, right? So um, that's one factor besides just the 5X um, formula. Okay.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
think the 5X formula that Randy's talking about here is a basic minimum, right? That an organization, if you want to build an organization and be able to hire people, it costs money to hire people, right? So if you bring in somebody, the first employee, and they are going to get paid $20 an hour, using Randy's example, if they're not producing $100 per hour, um, how can you have enough money after you pay them? You bring in $100 and you pay them 20. If you're not uh, making way beyond 20 what you're paying them, how can you afford to hire more people? How can you expand? How can you, as Randy said, how can you market? How can you keep the lights on? You probably have rent or a lease payment on the building that you're operating from, or from your home. You still have expenses at your house if you're operating out of your house. So now also keep in mind that to expand, you need good profits. Also, to be really viable and be able to stay in business through thick and thin, you need reserves, right? How can you build reserves if you're spending all your money on payroll? Do you follow? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to have an abundance. LRH says he says the only guarantee of survival is abundance.
Yay. Right.
So
Right.
you know, you might look at you might look at your business and go, how can I have 10x what I'm paying out in in salaries and payroll and independent contractors, or in labor, right? So
Mm.
it's all kind of arbitrary, but you need to take care of your group, your business. Uh, First and foremost, the individuals need to take care of the group. And that includes the individuals uh, being able to produce way more than they consume, way
Yeah.
more than the cost of hiring and employing them.
Yeah.
So there's that. And back to your point, Mary, is ask a lot of money. People put more value on it too, and they go, "Oh boy, that must be pretty valuable." She's asking $10,000 for it. So
Okay.
um,
Wonderful. Yeah,
anyway,
this sculpture is $5,000. I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
There you go.
All right, guys. Hey, sorry about flipping
There you go.
between slides there for a second
That's
too.
okay.
Yeah, that was my pinky hit the
That's all right.
keyboard.
But
But thank you. That's a good explanation. You're right. Yeah, it's surprising how
So Randy,
low
do you,
some people value their services and neglect this point of 5x to 10x
yeah, and
production.
as we move on, we're going to talk about breaking down the different stats you need to follow in an organization, and that'll all contribute to this too.
Okay, are you ready for the stats part? The
Yeah.
graphs part?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
yes.
All right. There we are. Let's
So
clear a
I'll
couple
do
terms
this
here.
So
one.
and
Randy,
then-
I'll let you go.
I'll go
let you,
ahead and do this
yeah, I'll
one.
let you go ahead and run this.
So
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
scaling graphs. Can you just go to a image of a graph briefly, and then we'll
Sure.
come back to the definition.
Of course.
Yeah. So here's an incorrectly scaled graph, and then show the next one, which is a correctly one scaled graph. Yeah. Now, basically, now let's go back up to the definitions page. By scaling a graph, we mean you want to plot it on the graph so that you can really see the numerical relationship of what you're trying to visualize. Like, let's say you're plotting the number of driftwood sales per week, sculptures sold per week. Well, you want to be able to see the ups and downs clearly from week to week. And that's what scaling is about. This is a formula here showing how to properly scale a graph to begin with. Next slide.
Right. Randy, can I make one quick comment? And this
Yes.
is true for me. I don't know if it's true for anybody else, but I really have to call people's attention to the fact that these are numerical relationships. One stat isn't going to cut it. You
One number,
need
another
at
one.
least to
Yeah.
one number, one value is not sufficient.
Yeah.
And you two or at least two is desirable, and three is better to get an idea.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. So I remember statistics are relationships, relative values of numbers, and the graph displays those numerical relationships.
Yeah.
So
Tony's,
I overlooked that. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I see Tony's raised his hand. I
But-
just wanted to say that
good point, Mary. Yeah. Good
yeah,
point.
I totally overlooked that, and you got to know that. Okay, yeah, Tony.
Can I
Tech, can you catch Tony? Yeah, he's
He's unmuted.
So
okay.
I
Go ahead, Tony.
I spent a couple years in the organization and did stats graphing and all that and sending it to Flag and so on. So one of the very first things is you have to keep your stats for, let's say, several weeks, to be general about it, to get an idea of what kind of trend it is, how much you want to show the ups and downs. You need a few weeks or a few days stats, and that's just the beginning of it. So whoever's starting to do their stats on something, don't panic. Keep it for several days, several weeks, several hours, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to cover trends too. That's right. Very good point.
That's all for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good.
when we get to the end of this, these displays, this PowerPoint, we're going to see a graph with up to 12 weeks of trends. So we will be reviewing that. Okay, I'm going to get that next slide for you, Randy.
Very good. So there's an incorrectly scaled graph. Now, why is that incorrect? Because it's all just kind of noted at the bottom, and you don't really see the ups and downs from week to week very clearly at all, because they've made the vertical scale incorrectly. Say they were way too optimistic. They thought, oh, we're going to make 30,000 every week sometimes, and it all ended up along the bottom. Now let's go to the correctly scaled graph. And this one is much more visible because you can really see the ups and downs clearly, and you can start to really see the trends, and so forth. And there's a numerical formula that you can use to correctly scale a graph. And we have a reference for that in one of these slides, probably the previous one or two. It's a numeric formula, how to figure it.
Right, it is in the PL, how to calculate the proper ratios of X to Y axes. I
And
should do this
do
because
we
everybody's
show,
looking at me like this.
do we
But
show that on one of the slides, that
no,
PL title?
no,
Oh, okay.
no,
We'll include that in the chat then.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Very good. Moving on. So here's the whole table of conditions from the highest down to the lowest. This is not the very lowest conditions, but these are the main ones that you're going to follow in business most of the time. And we'll go through these one at a time. Now, this is something, Steve, you referred to earlier, phase 1 and phase 2. If you're the only person in your group, you're beginning a new activity. This is what we call phase 1. An executive single hands while he trains his staff. In other words, you're doing everything all yourself at first, but then you gradually start to get other people to help. And when you have other people producing, functioning well, and had it or trained, you then enter the next phase, which we call phase 2, running an established activity. So here's the lowest condition usually applied on the third dynamic, non-existence. And we went over the formulas a bit last time. But what we're going to concentrate on today is, well, how do you know by a graph, how do you know by a statistic that you're in a non-existence condition? Next
Randy,
slide.
I have a question. I have a
Okay.
question about that before I show these
Yeah.
non-existence graphs. When you're first starting out, you do want to collect a few weeks of stats, right? Find your product, get the statistics, and keep track of them. I have to think that the upcoming graphs reflect someone who's coming down from a higher condition into non-existence, which is like a negative,
Yes.
a dip in the graph. So
Well,
what would you look for in the first few weeks, in other words? And I think Jerry just recently kind of started his business as an auditor, and I was a little curious if he applied stats and what he did during those first few weeks. I know you've been doing this for a very long time, but for someone who's new at a business.
well, the main thing is
Mhm.
to apply the formula, of course, as
Okay,
it's written here. But
okay,
like you said, yeah, 1 week stats is not going to tell you a lot, although the closer you are to an activity, the more often you want to track the numbers of it. In other words, if you're doing something where you produce something every day, like an auditor, one of my main things is I audit people. Well, I keep track of how many hours I audit each day as well as each week. So that's something you could start tracking right away when you're starting off something, like, well, let's see, I did 1 hour yesterday and I did 2 hours today. Now so far, it's a little bit of an upstat. You're going in the right direction, but we're not really out of non-existence until we complete the condition formula. And that's another important thing. When you start doing these conditions, you want to complete the formula as much as possible.
okay. Well, I just don't want people to be frightened at this next, the
Yeah,
sample graph for
yeah,
non-existence and think,
sure,
oh, I'm going to start out and everything's going to go to heck,
sure.
my
Good point.
stats are going to drop.
Good
Okay,
point.
so with that being said, let me go ahead and steer you
Mhm.
to the next
Yes.
graph.
Yeah. Now, this is
Okay.
a non-existence graph, like you were saying, where there had been something operating in the early part of the graph, the left, and then everything just kind of crashed out to the bottom. So this is where some successful activity was completely abandoned in some way. And the product production has just dropped almost to nothing. So that's one example of non-existence, where, in other words, you need to apply non-existence to a graph like this. Is there another non-existence graph we have? That's another same type of thing.
We
If-
we had we had one we had one. Sorry, we had one last week that was
Yeah.
along the bottom.
That's right.
Um,
There's a graph where
and
the line is
yeah.
all along the bottom. That's the kind that you were talking about, Mary, where you really haven't produced much of anything yet, and it's still just crawling along the bottom, right? That would be more common when you're starting a new activity.
Okay, okay,
Good.
good to know. All right, thank you. So
Good.
let's go on
Let's move
to,
along. Yes.
oops.
If the non-existent formula is applied correctly, one rises to the next condition. And danger would be the next one. A danger condition is normally assigned when an emergency condition is continued too long, or more relevant to stat graphs, a statistic plunges downward very steeply. Or a senior executive, a little too quick, a senior executive finds himself or herself wearing the hat of the activity because it's in trouble. That's a danger condition. But so that's basically the formula. Go ahead. And this is an interesting datum here from a very useful policy letter. Danger conditions, why organizations stay small. A large organization is composed of groups. A small organization is composed of individuals. Now, the whole PL on this is really useful once you're getting going, building up an organization. And LRH makes a point in this that if an executive basically continues to do all the jobs himself, and he doesn't organize it so that there are groups within the organization. In other words, I'm going to have a sales department because I now have 3 salesmen, and my top salesman I'm going to put in charge of the sales division. So you're forming a group within your group there. And now you have a chance to make a large organization. On the other hand, if everybody's just an individual, well, I have 10 salesmen and I have 4 receptionists and I have a treasurer, and these are all individuals, and they all report to me directly. It's going to stay small. And he makes the point in here about how once you start expanding, you want to create groups within the organization that can relate to each other. That's all I'll say about that for now, but I'd recommend this too.
Randy, I have a good real life example of this.
Sure. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have a few, but I'll talk about one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people can relate to this.
Yeah. Real
if you
life
look
examples
around,
are great. Go ahead.
if you if you consider, again, I've consulted quite a few dentists over the years, hundreds really, and most dental practices, if you go into them, most of you on this call would probably be able to relate to the fact that most of the dentists you've gone to, in fact, most of the doctors you've gone to, eye doctors, other doctors, chiropractors, most of them are one doctor and there's maybe 3 or 4, 5 staff. Okay. And then there's some where you might go into where there's 2 doctors, maybe 3 doctors, maybe more doctors, but the vast majority of dentists is 1 doctor and 3, 4, 5 staff. Okay. So, and the reason is explained in this policy why orgs stay small. So I have I took on a client in 1994 in Texas. In this practice, this doctor had two associates, and he had, I think, about 8 staff. And it was a nice practice. It was a good practice, but it wasn't really going anywhere. It had been at that level for quite a few years, and so I used this policy, and um, that practice grew. And to make a long story short, today there's 125 people. There's 12 or 13 dentists consistently in this practice, one location under one roof. Of course, this dental practice provides every imaginable dental service to the community. Okay. 125 people, does about $35 million a year. And it comprises of small groups. Every doctor in this practice, every dentist has their own set of staff. In other words, there's not one receptionist at the front that answers the phone for all the doctors. There are 12 receptionists that answer the phone individually for each of their doctors. There's 12 sets of dental assistants. There's 12 sets of hygienists, 2 or 3 in each group. Each group comprises of 5 or 6, 7 people. And again, there's consistently 12, 13 dentists. And this practice just continues this way. And as it expands, so there's these small groups within the larger group, and that's the way to build an organization. That's the way small businesses become very successful large businesses.
That's a great example,
and
Stephen. Yeah.
And then the other factor along this line, just to finish this thought, the other factor is each senior only has 4 or 5 juniors. Once a senior, a manager, for example, once it gets beyond 5 or so, it's not workable. It's not structured correctly, and you will not grow.
And that's a point. That's a point made by Hubbard in that policy letter that we were just looking at.
That's what
5 is about the optimum number. That's right.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
And this is why orgs stay small. Too many juniors is a sprawling, what LRH calls a sprawling organization, and too many juniors and not enough managers. I saw somebody was interviewed yesterday, and he says that he has I think 700 people under him. And
under one guy. Yeah.
Under one guy. Yeah. It's like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
That's just not workable. Now, if you look at the government, right? If you look at a president coming into office, and he looks like let's say he looks like he's 40, and 4 years later, 8 years later, he looks like he's about 65. Right?
Yeah.
It's very, very stressful when you're not structured correctly and you're violating this policy letter on why orgs stay small. And there are too many juniors. I mean, how many freaking people are answering to the president? It's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
So you have a very inefficient organization.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Well, good. Let's move on. What's a senior executive and senior danger formula? Yeah, let's just go right to the stats that goes with danger. There's a sample graph of danger, and we're going to get into the trends. Now, reading the trend, you see how do you know that this is danger? Well, A danger is basically a steep decline, like at least 45 degrees. And if you kind of visualize an average of slant of this graph, you see that it's in a steep decline. So that's why we would call that danger. Now, we're looking at, you have to look at several weeks for this to be danger, on a, just going back 1, 2, 3 dots, it's not really that steep. It's more like emergency, just slight down. But if you go back 3, 4, 5, or 6 dots, that's where it becomes really a danger graph. Okay, let's go to the next one. And there's another sample danger. And this one, especially in the last couple dots on that graph, the last couple weeks, where it's really descended steeply, that's danger. Where it had just been descending slightly, that was probably emergency there, but they failed to apply the emergency formula there, and then it dropped into danger. Okay.
Yeah. Now, Randy, I wanted to point out too, this is not, if you're just starting, if you're just coming out of non-E, the next level up is danger, believe it or not. And your graph won't necessarily look like this, but it is the formula to apply to get up to the next condition above danger.
That's
And
right.
let's see, Tony has a
Mm-hmm.
question. Tech, would you mind putting Tony,
Unmuting, Tony.
unmuting Tony for me? Thank you.
Or Tony, do you need to unmute yourself?
There.
There, you got it. Speak.
Okay, so that graph is really good for, don't know if you're going to get into it that much, but, and I haven't learned that much about it, is stat trends, and the very last steep drop is a non-existent, we'll say day, week, or hour, whatever there. The overall is going on, but there's these two different things, the trending of the whole thing. Like the stat graph before this one, I think the first week showed something major going on down, and then the overall trend we talked about, I forget what it was, danger or something. But this is the last 2 points is definitely non-existence, and then trend-wise, we could draw a line, roughly an average through the whole thing, and that's a non-existence trend. Really nasty.
Okay. Well, it may not be that steep. The overall trend, I believe, is an example of danger, but it's heading to non-existence if that last line continues. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next. So yeah. So the next condition up would be emergency. And one should, of course, study these formulas and follow each one of them. We're not going to go over the formulas in detail today. We mainly want to do the stats now. But let's take a look at what an emergency graph would look like. There is a sample graph of emergency, and this we're looking at the overall trend. It's slightly down. See, the overall trend is just slightly down. That's emergency. By the same token, do we have another emergency graph? Yeah, that's another emergency graph. See, it's almost level. If it were straight level, that would also be emergency, okay? But this trend is just, if you, like Tony says, if you drew a line average between all the lines across, it would be a slightly down trend. That's emergency. Okay? Good. Next. Good. And here's normal operation, normal formula, of course. And what would a normal graph look like? There's a normal graph. Okay, now this is an uptrend. It's not necessarily steeply up, but it's some degree up. It's just kind of steadily going up. And I think we have another normal graph too. Yeah, there's one that shows the trend. the overall trend, if you draw an average between the lines, it's an uptrend going back several weeks. Now that's an odd one because you see it's just barely, it goes up and down and up and down. But if you look at the overall trend, it's just slightly up, just barely up if you draw the average line through it. So that's still a normal trend on 3 or 4 weeks of stuff.
Can I make a can I make a comment
Go
here?
ahead. Yes.
So, what you want to be able to do on these trends is just stand back and instead of using a ruler or drawing lines,
Hmm.
that's really not a correct way to interpret a trend. The way to do it is if you go back to this last graph, what was that?
The previous one? That one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see it now, but the highs, if you look, the highs are going higher and the lows are going higher. The tendency of the graph is increasing.
Yes.
Again, the highs are going higher, tending to go higher, and the lows are tending to go higher. That's a
Yeah.
normal graph.
Yeah. Good. Good point.
So the opposite would be true with danger, where the lows are tending to go lower and the highs are tending to go lower, and you just eyeball it and you can see the trend, whether that be a 3-week trend or a 6-week trend or a 12-week trend.
Yes.
And I'll make one other comment here on reading trends and trying to determine the condition that the graph is in, that the activity based on the graph is in, and that is if there's any confusion about, oh, is this danger or emergency? I can't really tell by the graph. I can't really determine this easily. Okay, the way to do it is to look at the formulas of both. I do this all the time with my clients. It works fabulously. And the
Yeah.
way you do it is you simply look at the danger formula and the emergency formula, and you take a look at which formula would handle the situation. And LRH wrote an issue on this, and for the life of me, I tried to find it for this talk, and I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. It's probably in the management series, possibly. But Randy, you might be able to post that or something.
Yeah. And we can hunt that up.
But
It's a good point. Yeah.
but that's a good way to go. And what I do with my clients is I get them to look at both formulas. I get them to look at the graphs, and I just ask them, what formula do you think would be most appropriate to handle the situation? Because that's really what you're doing, is you're handling the situation. So you're doing a very simple why finding in that sense, without having to do a full why finding. You actually are doing a why finding, and the client that you're consulting, or the business that you're looking at, or the statistic you're looking at that's measuring the production that you're looking at, it'll come to light, and you'll see what is appropriate, and you'll be able to identify the actual operating state of that production activity based on the statistic trend.
Yeah.
The
Good point.
statistical trend.
Could we go
anyway.
back to the emergency formula slide, Mary, for example? Yeah, to the formula. Must be it. There. So here's an example of what you're talking about. So you would have yourself, you look at this formula and say, now I can't determine whether I should apply emergency or normal. And so you look this formula, You think it might be emergency. You look at step one, promote, and you go, oh yeah, that's right. We were doing a very successful promotion last month that brought in a lot of new business, and we haven't done any more of that lately. I think we'd better put that back in. Let's promote. That makes a lot of sense, you know. So that might be an example of what you're talking about, where by looking at the formula, you hit upon what should I be doing, right? Whereas when you look at the
Yep.
normal formula, now let's go back to normal. See, this one is you don't, to maintain an increase, you don't change anything. Ethics are very mild. So you look compared to this one and said, no, I think we need to change something because sales have dropped down a bit, so forth. So yeah, let's go back to emergency because we need to change something. Anyway, it was a great example. When in doubt, look at the formula, see what applies, you know. Okay, let's move on. We're running out of time. Here we go. Condition of affluence. Good. Now, of course, affluence is, if related to money, we would apply this formula, which step one, economize, step two, pay every bill, invest the remainder in service facilities, make it more possible to deliver, discover what caused the condition of affluence and strengthen it. Well, what's an affluence graph look like? We're also going to talk about action affluence. There's an affluence graph. Okay, you see how it's steeply up, especially the overall trend. There's another affluence graph, a steep uptrend. That's definitely affluence. There's another affluence graph, especially by trend.
Ella
Okay.
Wright says this is the trickiest condition there is.
Yes. Right.
This is the trickiest condition there is. Handle it on formula and it's a rocket ride. Handle it off formula. In other words, don't apply the formula, apply some other formula, and you splatter all over the street. I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
That's right.
But that's basically
can we go,
what he has
go
to
back,
say about it.
Go back to the affluence formula briefly. That one. Yeah, here's the champion way to evaluate that. So you get an affluence, you made a lot of sales, you got a lot of money coming in. The common impulse is, okay, now we can spend, we can go out and we can buy that new blah, blah, blah. We can have a party, we can celebrate, we can take that expensive trip we wanted to take, blah, blah, blah. So you've just violated the formula, step one. And this is one of the hardest things to get your noggin around when you're in affluence. Step one is economize. Wow. Yeah. Because
I
go
can't
ahead.
help
Go
but
ahead.
think, I'm sorry, Randy,
Mary,
I
go
can't help
ahead.
but think of all those young professional athletes. They get hired, they get
Yes.
$1 million contracts after being in college, living on a
Oh,
shoestring,
yes.
playing for free, basically,
Yes.
and they blow their money. Or someone who wins the lottery.
Oh,
that
yeah.
you've
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Anyway, that's all I had to say. And let's see, Tony has something to say here. Tech,
Tony,
can you
unmute yourself again. Or maybe Tony's aisle. There. You did it briefly and now it's muted again. Click it again.
Go there.
Bingo.
Okay. Yeah, the guy gets paid every week, and he goes out and doesn't, he has his beer with his buddies, or they go out to this and that, and by the Thursday or Friday of the next week, he doesn't have any money for his lunch money.
Yeah.
Because the what is that? I can't remember what the one thing about affluence is. A sudden inflow of money, you clamp a lid on it and go, what money? And then you pay all
Well,
the bills.
that's step one, economize. That's what he means by
Economize.
economize. Yes.
Yeah. So I've seen that with workers working with me that I always had money aside by Thursday. They would borrow the money and then I would charge them a few bucks to lend them.
Yeah, that's right. Because, and the thing to know here is, okay, there is going to be a chance to buy some things, but that comes at step 3, right? After
Yeah.
you economize and after you pay every bill that you can scrape up under the sun, moon, and stars, he says. Then, once you've done step 1 and 2, now you can invest in service facilities. What would be an example of that? Would be, well, we really we can invest in something that's really going to make it more possible to deliver, you know, like we've been struggling with an old dot matrix printer. We can get a little better printer for the office. You know, we don't have to spend a ton of money on it, but we can spend a little bit because it'll make it more possible to deliver, something like that, right? And then it's very important to do step 4, discover what caused the condition of affluence and strengthen it. And this is where using the graph can really help. We go back to look at the affluence graph again. Then we will look back and say, okay, let's look back at when this whole trend started on the big upswing. What did we do back then that really started taking this off into a steep? And you go back and you examine your records of what actions were we taking 6, 7 weeks ago there that began this whole affluence trend. You isolate those things and you want to strengthen them, right? That's an example of stat analysis that you want to do. Okay. Good. You want to add anything to all that, Steve?
Only that I just want to stress that these conditions formulas are natural laws, and the better you can look at your statistics and determine what condition you're actually in, whether it be individual statistics in your organization or just you personally, of what you're producing, no matter what that is. The better you can determine the condition you're in and apply the actual correct formula, the better chance you have of expanding and surviving and thriving and doing well. These are natural laws. These are not just some formulas that LRH invented uh, because he had nothing else to do and he wanted to come up with some fancy formulas. These are natural laws. And I just want to give a couple of examples. Of we already Randy already mentioned that the impulse on affluence, when all of a sudden there's a windfall, all of a sudden there's all this extra income that came in, whether it be over a week or two or a month, whatever it is. All of a sudden you got all this extra money that you're not used to. You were used to operating and paying your bills and doing okay at, let's say, 20,000 a month. All of a sudden you start hitting 30,000 a month, and there's an extra $10,000 that you really are not used to. You're in a condition of affluence. The graph shows it. Your income graph shows it, and the first impulse is to, well, shoot, we have all this extra money. We can afford that down payment on that beach house. We can afford to a down payment on that Mercedes. We've always wanted a Mercedes, honey. So let's go ahead and get. We deserve it. We've been working so hard. We deserve something nice. We can afford it. And when people start off like that with that formula, violating the first step, they never get to the last step, which is discover the cause of the affluence and strengthen it. They never get to the step 2, 3. They never get to 3, where they're investing the remainder in service facility to make
Yes.
it more possible to deliver. They're off in Hawaii on vacation, and the whole thing comes crashing down. I've seen it violated. I've done it myself. It's the easiest, trickiest, and the easiest one to violate. So if you're really smart, and this is one thing that my clients really appreciate about me, is I keep them on track. And I'll just give you a quick example. Just yesterday, the client stats on 1 week were in affluence, and we went over the formula, and on the step of affluence, where it's pay every bill, which is the second step, right? We're on that
Mhm.
step. And I said, so, and this client, I've been working with him for 1.5 years. Early on, probably he had 4 or 5 affluences within the first couple, 3 months. He paid off all his bills that he could scrape up under the sun, moon, and stars. Those were already all paid. I knew that too. And so yesterday I said, so what we want to look at now is retiring debt. Let's take the highest interest debt. Well, he'd already paid off a lot of the debt, especially the high interest debt that he had. So now all he has left is one payment, one debt, which is his home mortgage. His office is paid off, and so on. So I said, let's take a look at what you can afford. Can you afford 2 payments or 3 payments? Right? In other words, instead of just paying one payment for the month, right? The regular payment. So he said, I can do 3. I said, okay, so if you do 3, are you going to have enough money left over to invest some, maybe a few thousand, 10,000, whatever? Oh yeah, no problem. So, okay, let's do 3 anyway. Um, and then he says, Steve, hang on, my wife's calling me. And
Uh-huh.
I said, sure. So he comes back about 20 seconds later. He goes, oh, she was calling me because she got a notification from the bank about a payment. And so before I even finished my sentence with him, he had made 3 payments, and his wife was calling him, asking him about this payment that was made. He goes, oh, that's I made 3 payments on the mortgage. So
Yeah.
anyway, and then he was telling me about his wife, being very happy when he tells her that he's going to consult with me, and he goes, oh, you're going to talk to your buddy, go ahead. Right? In other words, she's very, very, very supportive. I've never met her before, but she's very supportive of him getting help every week with his conditions formulas. Anyway,
Yeah. Great
um,
example. Yeah.
that's just a little story. This guy is debt free, not debt free, but he's got no bills, and
Yeah.
he's getting debt free, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
And he's only about 45 years old.
he still has money to invest in
Go ahead.
certain facilities too, which is a great sign. Yeah. Good. And then
He
we
just
have
remodeled a 50,000. He just did a $50,000 remodel on his office.
great, great,
Cash.
great,
Yeah.
fantastic. Now
Anyway,
here's the
uh,
other version of affluence, which is called action affluence. And this one is based on actions rather than money. So, for example, not all statistics just measure money. Some of them might measure products produced. Like, well, we turned out 50 widgets this week, and usually we only turn out 20 in a week. So in that case, you would want to apply action affluence to that operation because it's not directly related to money, but it has to do with actions like make every action count, there's a missing one, I guess, up there, but step one is economize on needless or dispersed actions that did not contribute to the present condition. Economize financially by knocking off all waste, and so on. I won't go through every one, but these are oriented toward actions. So that's what action affluence is. When you're dealing with an activity that has to do with production, not just money, you know. Yeah. Okay.
So, so can I
Yeah.
continue?
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy. That's very good. So can I just say one more comment on these
Sure.
formulas? Okay.
Sure. Mhm.
And that is, if you, I'm just talking to the group rhetorically here, but think about being an emergency. You're going along, you're making 10,000 a month, let's say 20,000 a month, you're doing okay. And you're getting by, you're paying your bills, everything's cool, you're normal. And now things flatten off, and you're now, instead of doing 20,000 a month, which you're used to, you're now doing 18, 16, 19,000 a month.
Mhm.
And the graph is flat, it's going down some. You're an emergency. What's the first thing? Again, this is rhetorical because I can't engage with the group here. But what's the first thing most people do? What's the first impulse in emergency when things are kind of tight? Well,
Economize. Right.
they economize. They tighten their belt. Oh boy, we better be careful. We better not spend any money. Things are not going good. They get nervous. That's all the wrong. That's nothing to do with the formula. The first
Right.
step is to promote. Well, it may cost something to promote. It may not cost a lot to promote, but it's going to cost something probably.
Yes.
And so it's in other words, the formulas. If you look at all the formulas, they sort of they help you combat the physical universe has a tendency. Most of you on this call, I don't know how many are here, but you understand, I think, that the physical universe is a reverse, upside down, backwards, inverse universe, right? It makes you do the opposite of what you probably should be doing for your own personal survival and so on. So that's why I'm just stressing the fact that these are natural laws, and if you learn these well and you learn how to staticize your production and your income and so forth, you can get into a higher condition, normal, affluence, even power,
And let's
and
go
you can
on. Let's
stay
go on
there,
to power.
and
That's
you
right.
don't need. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but we can start looking at power there
No,
too.
that's fine.
Yeah. But good
Yeah,
point, Steve.
that's
Good
fine.
point. You know. So here's power, condition of power, and there's the formula. But let's look at the graph next. What would a power? So power is not a 1 week thing. It starts with a big affluence that goes up into a higher range, and then the next graph shows when it turns into power. It's a normal trend in a much higher range. This is what we call a power condition graph. Okay. So it's a combination of things. It can't be determined on 1 week or maybe even 3 weeks, but it's a bit longer trend before you determine, now we're in a power condition. We've gone into a much higher range than we were before, and we're at least in a normal condition at that higher range. So now let's take a look at the formula of power.
I'll just add, Elleridge
Yeah,
says a
yeah.
superabundance.
Okay. Superabundance, yeah. So here's the first dynamic power formula. Don't disconnect. Make a record of all of its lines. Write up your whole post. Write things up, get it into the hands of the guy who's going to take care of it. Do all you can to make the post occupiable. And then here's a third dynamic formula. I won't go through it step by step, but this is the formula for power. Power changed. Now, this is an interesting one. There's not a graph per se for power change, but this is a condition where, let's say you're building an organization and you have your home office and you're going to start several other offices and you're going to move up and you're going to be managing all 4 of these new offices. What are you going to do about the home office? Are you going to just let that wither? No. You turn it over to somebody that's going to pick up the boots that you were wearing in the home office. And then the red part there, there are only 2 circumstances which require replacement, the very successful one or the very unsuccessful one. If it was in a state of normal operation, you don't change anything. You go through the same formula of normal that the predecessor went through. Now, the other possibility is you're replacing somebody who's left in disgrace. Now, you'd better apply the state of emergency formula to that, which is to immediately promote. So these are 2 different possibilities in power change. Okay? Good. Next slide. Yeah. Now here's what happens if you violate the power change formula. See, it went in big steep affluence, it went into normal, it went into power, and then it drops steeply down into danger and it's heading to non-existence because whoever took over there at the top violated the power change formula. Basically, they did not continue the actions that were being done when it was in power, and it went into danger and non-existence. Okay?
Good.
Yeah, good. Now let's talk about the importance of setting goals, targets, quotas. You want to talk about that a little bit, Steve?
Sure. Absolutely vital. You get what you put your attention on, and if you don't put your attention on a certain quota, a certain volume of production, a certain volume of income, you're probably not going to get it.
Mm.
So you want to establish set goals, set your quotas, what you want. And I think monthly works pretty well for me. For my clients that I consult, I don't set necessarily weekly goals. You can break it down and you could set daily, weekly goals. But monthly works pretty well. That's up to you. It kind of depends on what you're doing, really. But setting quotas, setting these goals is vital. And I always tell clients to I always instruct them and coach them on setting their quotas higher, setting their goals, their quotas for expansion. Why would you ever set a goal to go lower than you did, say, last month? So I'll give you a real
Yeah.
quick story. I had a client
Mhm.
a while back, and he's like, he was getting started, and he had a good month, and a very good month actually. And I'm like, okay, let's establish next month. And he's like, well, Steve, I had all this extra work come in, these big cases come through. I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't know if it will happen again. So he wanted to, in other words, he wanted to set his next month's target for lower. And I said, hang on. LRH says whatever caused the condition of affluence is capable of causing it again. This is
Yes,
very, very important.
yes.
Whatever causes the condition of affluence is capable of causing it again. I said, what about changing your mind? And what about recognizing that you could have more big cases next month, instead of oh, maybe it won't happen. What about this? Let's just change. LRH says the easiest thing to do is change your mind, or the easiest thing to change is your mind, right?
Mhm.
So I said, let's change your mind. So I got him to change his mind, and the next month he did like 20% higher than he did the month before, and all of a sudden, within 3 months, this practice had doubled, and it was already doing pretty well. So that's an example of the importance of setting goals. So every month I always help my clients establish their targets, their quotas, and on their key stats, right? And
Yes.
you can figure out your key stats based on what you are producing. You've got sub products and other stats, just then other than just income, or other than just production. There's other production areas or other products that you're producing, or sub products that are contributing to your overall business or your overall game you're playing.
Yeah.
So I just
Good
wanted
point.
to
Now-
mention that.
That's great.
Okay, I was going to say in part 3 of improving your condition in life, we can address some of the other admin techniques and some of the other things that LRH has set forth in the admin tech, right? I mean, you guys
Yeah.
haven't told me what you're going to talk about next in part 3, but I'm
Well-
sure we're going to cover some of this.
Yeah, one part that just came to mind is the org board, for example. Like, how do you know which products to keep stats on? How do you know what are the important products of your organization? Well, the answer to that is called the organizing board. And LRH developed a lot of tech on that, and that's something we might cover next time. Okay.
That's great. Hey, we do have a question in the chat, and I thought, oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, the next seminar we're going to deliver the KTL LOC in full, and we'll try to do it. We'll try to do it in less than an hour.
Oh my
Good one.
gosh.
Good one.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, we did have a question. Why are these conditions natural laws? Is there an axiom related to them about that?
An axiom related to them.
Related
Well,
to this
all I
natural
can tell you
conditions, right?
is, yeah. All I can tell you is, if you will trust that maybe, just possibly, these are true, that these are laws, these are tenets that work every single time. If you'll trust that and just try it and say, I'm going to start doing it as an exercise every week on my key statistics, that they absolutely work, and they work every time, just like magic. And if you don't believe me, you can talk to some of my clients, and they'll tell you, yes, they are magic. And these are people that didn't necessarily believe me at first, but they became believers.
Yeah, that's right. And basically, just to add to that, LRH says none of this is true unless it's true for you. It's not workable unless you find it to be workable, So be sure you understand it and then apply it and see if it works. And that's the way to determine if it's natural law. Okay.
Yeah, I think anybody that like I said, I always like to use the emergency formula and the emergency condition and the affluence condition as examples to show people, and just to kind of demonstrate that the fact that they are natural laws. that they can see that, yes, that is the impulse, right? Some people will say, oh no, the first thing I would do if I have all this extra money is I would pay all my bills. Well, logically, yes, that sounds good, but that's not really what happens. In real life, that's not really what happens. That's not what most people, that's not their first impulse. Just
Yeah.
like their first impulse when
Gotcha.
they're in an emergency, is to spend some money on some marketing. That's not natural. It's not sort of the natural impulse. So people can usually see that. Oh yeah, this makes sense. I'll try it. Yeah, this looks good.
Mhm.
I'll try it. And then
Yeah,
they try it and they say, yeah, this works.
that's right.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Good.
So, Stephen, Randy, do you think we can handle a little quiz here? Maybe I should ask our attendees that, but shall we give this a quick shot? See if we
Sure.
can
I,
get people to identify, and you can type this into chat and tell us your answer. But go ahead, Randy, you were going to say we've got a stat graph here, and
yeah, go ahead and show the graph. So the quiz here
okay.
is to tell what condition is this graph in on a 1 week trend, on a 3 week trend, 6 week trend, 12 week trend. That's the quiz. And so you can chat, or to make it quick, you can now unmute yourself, raise your hand, and answer it if you like.
Okay, can we get everyone on unmute? Yep, all that's
She
done.
did that, yeah.
Hmm.
So Tony, what
Let-
would you say this graph is in on, say, a 3 week trend?
Let's see if 3 week is um emergency. It's slightly going down overall.
Good.
And then now the 1 week, that's high normal, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh, that's right.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then 6 weeks is definitely the emergency trend. It's getting close to danger trend, maybe.
But it's still emergency, I think. Yeah,
So, yeah.
the trend.
And of course, I'm laughing because I think of PTSD and showing up on the stat graph, up, down, sideways.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole
okay,
different subject we'll cover.
yeah. How
Okay,
about 12 weeks?
12 weeks. Let's see here. That's that's a good normal overall. That power week really brought it up, and then fortunately, the very present week, the number one, came back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do a rough line through that.
Good.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Well, let's see if Tony's right. Let's check the answers, shall we? Or are we ready for that?
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sitting down so I won't faint. Okay.
Okay. 1 week is indeed normal. 3 weeks is indeed emergency, and 6 weeks normal, and 12 weeks, believe it or not, 12-week trend is affluence.
Yeah.
Can we look at the graph
Yeah.
again, just to digest that a
Sure,
little
sure,
bit?
sure. And this is, by the way, this graph and the other graphs we've looked at have been from the Data Series Evaluator course. And if you want to take that course, Randy offers it. And I've taken the Data Series Evaluator course. It's amazing. Totally changed my way of thinking about things. But here we go. Here is the stat graph itself.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It could we say, Randy, it's almost a high normal, but affluence is like, yeah, this looks right there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then,
Yeah, it looks
Like
like about a 4 to
Steve
5.
said, the lows are getting higher and the highs generally are
yeah.
higher
And
too.
and
Yeah.
Getting it.
and like you or Steve said, take a look at the condition formulas, which one indicates better.
Mm-hmm.
Make
That's
sure
right.
for the
That's right.
particular
Mhm.
situation, if there's a kind of a doubt.
Yes.
Good.
Wow.
That's really good. Yeah.
Very
Tony will get Tony. Tony, we'll give you a red star.
Yes. Or a gold
That's
star.
awesome.
No, I
Maybe
need a green star. I want to be
Anybody,
rich.
green, yay,
The
green.
green star.
anyone else want to go for a red star, gold star, green star?
No,
It-
that's good. That's good.
I think that's pretty good. We
I
got the
think we
idea.
gotta
And
wind
Tony,
it up. I have to
we,
deliver an auditing session in a few minutes, so I'm gonna have to go soon.
okay, yeah, we had better get going. We are a little over time. But let's go ahead. Are there any other questions from our audience today? You can type them in. We've unmuted you so you could ask any questions. And I have to wait for 7 seconds to get an answer. Have we got any questions in the chat? All right. Going once, going twice. Yes, we have one. What's the
Me ag-
question?
Me again.
Oh.
Is there
Oh,
something we could talk about in another time of a PTS graph? I heard about that somewhere, sometime, and we don't have to get into it right now.
Yeah, I don't know if we can look for a LRH reference on that. I'm not. I think I know what you mean. You mean severely up, down, like roller coastering, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it crashes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll
I-
look for a reference on that. Go
I
ahead.
can draw one for you if you'd like.
Oh,
But we'd probably know,
Well-
well, what do you do about it? That's
yeah,
probably
we can get into
the
that in
question.
another. We can
Yeah.
get into that in another meeting. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
how
that's
about
right.
we do that for part 3? We'll keep that in mind. I'll put it in my notes, and
Good.
here's another little thing we need to look at. That'll give us time to look up the reference rather than giving you verbal
Yeah.
data.
Let's do that.
So let's talk about where people can get references that we've mentioned today, and talk about the next seminar a little bit.
Okay. Oh, and we do have another question in the chat. And what is the question? Let's see. Let me.
Oh,
How
Randy,
would you
if you want to
recommend the book
go,
Speaking
I
from
understand.
Experience
okay.
by LRH? How would
Repeat
you
that, Mary. It
recommend
was
the-
broken up. Sorry.
How would you
Yeah,
recommend the book Speaking from Experience by LRH? Is there such a book, Speaking from Experience?
No,
I'm not
well, there
familiar
is,
with that.
but it's based on LRH. It's based on LRH writings. It's not LRH.
Oh, okay.
But in that book, speaking from experience, there's LRH quotes. I'm familiar with that book, but I don't have it handy. But I have a book called Small Business Success Manual, which is pretty good. There's lots of those types of books, but yeah, speaking from experience is one.
Okay. Yeah,
would you-
apparently it talks about graphs, conditions, formulas, admin scales, etc. So it sounds like a compilation. Yeah,
Okay, well,
our
I have to go, everybody. Great seeing you, and I will look forward to seeing you next time, okay?
okay, and we'll
Okay,
wrap it
Randy.
up here,
Thank
Randy.
you.
Have a good afternoon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Okay. Does anybody have some wins to share today?
I have too many.
I know. You're like that, Tony. You're just winning all the time. Tony, by the way, is on Solo Knots along, and